Toverland. I'm the managing director of IMAscore. We're mainly producing music for theme parks all over the world, and also like to thank everyone involved in the Toverland Fan Day for having me, for giving the chance to this Q&A, which is fortunately here at the park where we've been allowed to produce a lot of music for several projects. We started in 2013 with the music production, audio production for the Market Chevrolet, and fortunately it goes on until today with a lot of music in several styles. But I'm not here to talk about IMAscore. I'm here to talk about IMAscore, but I'm here to answer your questions today, which is also the first time for me, just to have a Q&A, another presentation. So I'm really excited to hear what your questions are and what you're always wanted to know about music productions for Toverland and for theme parks in general, or maybe for anything else we produce music for. Anyone who likes to begin first? Yeah.
How many theme parks have IMAscore to do business with? How many?
I think it's about 50 theme parks all over the world that use music by IMAscore. Sometimes it's a bit hard to count because we also provide music for Merlin Entertainments, and they, for example, have Lego Discovery Centers all over the world. Sometimes we don't know if one or another doesn't or does use our music, so sometimes it's hard to count. But yeah, it's about 50 theme parks all over the world we work closely for.
When a park comes to you, and say, we want music, you have to have general direction what kind of music. How does that process start? Do you come up with the park? Is it different from park? You can tell us something like that.
Yeah. The start is very different, and it differs a lot from theme park to theme park, because sometimes a theme park comes to us with a quite already quite thought through idea of what they like to have. They already have reference tracks, maybe from movie soundtracks, or also other theme parks, or maybe our own soundtracks that we produced in the past, which makes it, of course, a bit easier to produce music because we already know the style, the direction, and the mood. But sometimes it's just a few words like, it should be atmospheric, evil, or just a nice place where you feel welcome, happy. There are many words to describe it, but also many ways to interpret these words, which always leads to us making a first demo, sending it over to give the park a first idea of what we think it could sound like. And then it's a back and forth, as we always offer unlimited change requests until our clients are 100% satisfied. Luckily, we never reach this unlimited, but still we're working hard and very close with our clients to create these soundtracks. It's in most cases, it's not like we just send the music and this is the final result. It's always a process. And as better you know your clients, and it's really important to become some sort of friends with them, because music is such a personal thing. It's not like not like a fixed structure that can be built, and or a wall that is built, and it's okay like that because it's a wall, it's all clear. Music is very personal, and everyone has another idea of what good music, or what happy music, or even evil music sounds like. So it's always a process, and it's always the most exciting part about working in this industry, because there are so many creatives in the theme park industry. They all have so many different ideas and so many crazy ideas, and to interpret that into music is really exciting. Yeah.
So you've been in the score here for Laguna and Avalon, I believe, also for Mike's. Well, I would think that for Laguna and Avalon, you're already, when you hear those names, you're already thinking into a certain direction, whereas Mike's lies a little bit more freeform, I would guess. So how do you decide, how do you make up your mind which direction you go into with the music that you score?
Actually, all of the three areas hasn't been that obvious to us. Of course, we had a first idea how it would sound like, but still it was very important to get into the discussion with a lot with Tessa and Peter van Horsting about how it could sound like and what the story behind this area is. Because of course you see, for example, Port Laguna, which is a summerly, very positive area, but you have this sort of backstory. You still have a magic backstory about this little bottles filled with magic spells stranding there, and you try to get this into the music as well. Because you can just do happy summer guitar music on one hand, but there must still be some sort of magical layer on it which combines it all. Of course, it's very subtle. Maybe no one will ever get these details in the music. It's a very subtle music in general in theme parks. It's a very subtle thing which you don't recognize first thing if you come to a park because you're excited. You just but music should help you to get this feeling. What's behind all this? What you see? It helps you to get into a mood which you maybe do not even know you got because of the music. It should just feel natural when you get there. And that's the job that music has to do on this. And I said it wasn't obvious. It wasn't obvious on the Magische Ballet. It wasn't obvious at Avalon because, of course, you have this great big roller coaster there. And it's really intimidating. And one could have the idea to produce intimidating music, which is very, very epic and very, very dangerous and evil. But in the case of Avalon and Phoenix, it was important to capture the feelings of families and children as well, because we don't want them to be frightened of this ride. They should be happy to ride it and don't feel like it's okay, it's really dangerous because the music is somewhere also telling me it's dangerous, I don't want to ride it. That it shouldn't happen. It was important to add, with music, add a layer to these areas, which made people feel welcome and made people feel positive to everything they see. And that's what the music had to do there. And that was something that we needed to develop in a very long, month-long process to understand, yeah, this is what we want to say with the music. And it's most of the times it's not obvious how it should sound like, because there are many minds getting together into this result, and it's always a long process, which is, yeah, takes a few months actually, most of the time.
You say it's not obvious, but not even in the choice of instruments or the choice of chords that you use?
Of course you have, in terms of chords, for example, most of the times it's obvious, yes. Because you have positive music and you want to have music which is understandable for everyone. When I say understandable, I don't mean it mean in any way. Of course you can produce very complicated music that is hard to understand because it's switching the chords, very complicated chords, and you don't really get, is it happy now or is it evil? What does the music want to say to me? And that's why the chords or the general music we produce is obvious, because it's good and easy to understand what the music wants to say to me. But in terms of instruments, we always try to push us in a way that is different than we did before. That's not always possible because sometimes areas are for some sort of similar, or if you want happy orchestral music, it can sound similar. That can happen, but we always try to add a specific instrument to it, which is unusual. For example, in Port Laguna, we have used, it's a handpan drum. I think it's in the making of videos, right? It's actually, yeah, it's not really a drum, but it's a summerly sound that it makes. It's more like a gong or something like that can be played with the hands. It's also known as kaisa. And that was something we never used before in theme park music. Of course, these are just little details, but even though it could be obvious what instruments to make, we try to not make it too obvious. Yeah. Yeah.
How many people are working by IMAscore?
We're 11 now. We started at 3 in 2009. We're now 11, and 7 of them are composers, and the rest are doing more administrative things.
How large is the orchestra you use when you
when we work with an orchestra, we usually work with the Budapest Film Orchestra. They are 63 musicians plus the conductor in front of them. It can be smaller. That's possible. Most of the times it's a thing of budget, because of course every musician costs money, of course. But 98% of our music is digital music, which was when recorded with a real orchestra. For example, every note was recorded, every string was recorded, and we can play it. So it's all when a musician played the music that we produce, but we don't. We need to explain it a little bit different, or from the beginning. The software we use to produce music consists of samples, and these samples have been recorded with real musicians, but they recorded really just the dit, dit of a string, for example, or different types of ways to play one instrument. And we are now able to play these instruments with keyboards and to reproduce this orchestral sound. And today, the quality of this digital orchestra is already that good that most of the times it's not necessary to record it with a real orchestra. Recording with a real orchestra is a good thing if you also use it for marketing, for example, because it's great to show that you have 63 musicians playing your music, and that's something special. But for theme park music, it's not necessary, because the sound outdoors doesn't really give you this hi-fi sound that really makes you hear the difference between digital or real orchestra. Yeah.
What was the hardest project for you to make?
Sorry?
Which was the hardest project for you to make?
The hardest? I think there are quite a few Phantasialand projects that are quite difficult. I think that's obvious in a way. But no project is really easy. What, for example, made the whole Avalon, Port Laguna, and entrance area project difficult was because it was so big. And what also made it difficult is that we don't want it to copy the Magische Ballet, but still it should be connected in some way. And that was difficult, because as soon as you use similar instruments, it very quickly sounds too similar. So that made it, it's always difficult to work for a park which already has a lot of music by us, because you don't want to copy yourself, but you still want to build a connection, and that makes this difficult. I mentioned Phantasialand. What makes the jobs of Phantasialand a bit difficult is that they don't build their stuff really planned. And this is also a thing then of the music, because in the beginning they say one thing, but then notice, okay, we still want something totally different when we're halfway through, and we think, okay, good, we'll start again. But that can happen. But this is also part of the process. It's important. It happened here as well. We have areas where we produce music for, and we noticed, okay, that doesn't work. It just doesn't work, or it does not fit the imaginations the creatives had, because we can be wrong. We can be very wrong, because the people, and I'd like to mention especially the greatly talented Peter van Holstein here from Toverland, already has a very clear idea of the story and the whole look and feel of what they are creating here, but we don't. We just see some few pictures, and that's why it's important to come here to talk with him and to understand the whole philosophy that should be created. So that's why every project can be difficult if you don't talk enough. It's important to discuss all these little details, and sometimes hear about details that are not important for the music firsthand, but will be later on, because they are all summing up to a big picture that you try to create music-wise.
How was it to make a song with a voice?
How it was to make a song with a voice?
Yeah.
For example, here for the boat ride.
Yes.
That was awesome. It doesn't happen that often that we are allowed to produce a song. Because songs and voices, yeah, they are in some sort. They are very obvious. They have lyrics. They have a voice that represents something, and music is more. How can I say that? Music, in a way, can suit so many things. But if you have a voice, if you have lyrics, you have a song. It's not that general anymore. It's very, very individual, and it's very intimate about what the lyrics say or what the singer gives you, what a feeling it gives you. Because there's nothing that there's nothing that gets in our heart like the human voice, and that's also why it's really different how everyone feels about it. And that's why it is some sort of always tricky to have a song, because music can be liked by way more people if it does not have vocals. But here we had the chance to do it, and it was great, because we think that it's a good way to tell details or a background of a story this way. Because of course you can have plays with text on it, with a lot of text and background information. But putting that into a song makes it feel like it's really a part of the whole experience from our point of view.
I noticed in Schwabenpark there was a reference to a popular song.
Yeah.
Are there often references to popular songs in general?
No, not that often. Schwabenpark.
It was the first time, or
Not the first time. There are some songs that we, for example, blues for commercials or some stuff like that. It does not happen that often in theme park music, which is heard at the theme park. For commercials, we have this very often that we receive reference tracks from popular songs. In this case, at Schwabenpark, it was quite a crazy idea. Don't many people know that music. It's actually yeah, it's an orchestral piece of music combined with electronic music, and the lead instrument is a chicken. There was a quite interesting thing. The reference track was the song Popcorn. I'm really a bad singer, but it's just you might be some use here. Sorry for my bad singing. And because the theming of this ride, it's called Wilde Hilde, which is actually a chicken. Yeah, the chicken should be the main instrument, some sort of vocal that sings it and shows like bark, 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 bark. So yeah, that happens sometimes, but yeah, this is quite special, and it's also a quite special result in the end, because we never used the chicken before as an instrument. For sure, we never again. I'm quite sure, even though you don't know if Toverland likes to have a chicken thing, right?
No, I think we already have enough chickens in the Blitzbahn.
Oh.
And we have the fire chicken, right?
Yeah, so that's about chicken. Yeah.
Als het vingerprocess, die pak ik, no, we gaan going anywhere we stop in the process. We go somewhere else.
As I said, music is a very, very personal thing. And when a composer writes a piece of music, he puts a little piece, oh no, that's really getting dramatic now. He puts a little piece of heart in it, of his heart. And that's gone forever and ever. And if someone says, no, we don't like this, it's bad. That happens. I'm the one in between. He's telling it me and I'm telling it the composer. So I'm getting the angry fans here and I have the angry composers here. So that's my job. Yeah, it hurts. It's true. I can't say it any different, but still we say all our clients to tell us their really honest opinion about their music, because we want them to be happy in the end. And 99%, we're also happy in the end. But still, of course, if something gets denied, you still feel like someone punched you in the face or something else. It hurts. But that's okay. It needs to hurt, because otherwise you can't get to a result that you feel also emotionally connected with. Because as soon as it hurts, you know you put something in there, a good piece of you in there, and that's important, because the people who we work with, they expect from us to put in all our effort. And sometimes it's also anger in the most positive way.
For example, we also made a mistake. So they made this station music for Phoenix, and Peter and I were listening to it, and we said, no, it should be way more up-tempo, and it should be up-tempo all the time. And no, it's not good enough. So they made 10 whole new minutes, and we listened to the 10 whole new minutes, and we thought to ourselves, oh my god, we made a mistake. The last version was perfect. So in the end, they made 10 minutes for nothing, but we are very happy with the music now. sorry once again.
Oh, fine.
Yeah.
It hurts, but we're trying to. You know, in the end, you get to the part, because most of the time when we're producing, we don't have the time to go over the construction site, because we're working on so many different projects. But when we get to the park and we listen to it on site, we understand why the people have decided that way. Because they're right. Even though a composer says, yeah, but the first version was good as well, it's still that it feels right in the end. We never had the feeling of that, yeah, no, really, that isn't good what's wrong. We never had that feeling because, you know, we put the heart in our music and they put the heart in what they create here. And this needs to match. And that's why it's important to have this sometimes hurting, sometimes not so much hurting process.
What project are you most proud of?
There are quite a few, actually, because like I said, we all put our effort in every project that we have, even though it may be a chicken song or it's an epic orchestra piece. There are some. I'd like to really honestly mention Toverland first on this, because Toverland was the first park that gave us the chance to produce music for a project that was larger than we ever expected to work on. That was the Magische Ballade. In the beginning, we did the music for Krake at Heide Park Resort, which was very atmospheric, evil. It's Merlin. So evil. Yeah, that's the word. Evil. There's nothing more to say about it. But then we did the Hollywood on Parade music for Movie Park Germany, which might as well could have been the end of our career, because it's yeah, you know, it's a song that's good for kids. But the grown-ups, I think they're really not that much into it. Yeah. Yeah, it's a parade. Yeah, parade music needs to be so happy that it hurts. But then Toverland gave us a chance to work on such a huge project, and they've been so warm-hearted about this that I always love to tell the story. We got the final okay for the job with a hug and a kiss on the cheek by Caroline Caton. And that was our first real experience in starting to work in Toverland. So that's why we're proud about this relationship, because we're working, these projects are larger than all of the others we're working on, even though it's not the guest-wise biggest part. And that's highly interesting, because they really put in so much effort in also the musical and acoustic design of the theme areas and attractions. Of course, there are also other projects. We're of course happy about the project at Phantasialand, even though they are difficult to get to an end. We still are yeah, amazed by what they do theme-wise. It's amazing what they do. Another project we're really happy of, because it was an orchestral production, is Kernan at Hansa Park. This was the only project in our whole career where we didn't receive the feedback to. We produced music for the orchestra. We had 2 weeks to produce it. We produced and produced and produced. And one day before we recorded, we sent, I think it was the 10th mail, please, can we get a feedback on this? We can't change anything, but at least the feedback, we're recording tomorrow. And they said, yeah, it's all fine. That was interesting, because then we had a lot of creative freedom, but as I said, it made us anxious. composers say, they give too much feedback, they influence the music too much, but on the other hand, if they don't receive feedback, they say, they don't receive feedback, we don't know what to do. That's composers. I'm not a composer, so I can say that. They're the artists. I'm the businessman. So. Yeah, we're part of that, and we're part of Headaches, because it's so different. It's electronic music, it's some sort of dubstep, orchestral, whatever kind of music it became in the end. And that's cool, because it shows that we can also do something totally different if we're asked to. But it's good, because most of the times we produce orchestral music, which is also nice, but it's more typical to theme parks. So it's always good to have something totally different. Yep.
Yeah, for the music for theme park, but you also have some online music, like for Toverland here, you also the track. How does producing this kind of music for the non-ride differ from producing normal?
It differs a lot. Music for rides, for the onboard soundtracks, differ a lot because they are more like the classical type of writing music or film music. Theme park music is a lot like film music. Because you try to add an extra layer to the things you see. But the things you see aren't ready before we write the music. Let me explain it. On a movie, you receive a rough cut of the movie, and the composer can write the music to the scenes and accompany the visuals. At the theme park, they show us a big place full of mud and say, this will be beautiful, write music for it. That's the difference. And on rides, on onboard music, it's like you mostly have an animation, or in the case of Toverland, we had the similar ride that stands in La Palme, in France, where we've been able to produce music too. And that's great, because you can really accompany the dynamics of the ride and the highs and lows, and that's cool. But that makes it also a lot different. Music, the general music for theme parks, needs to work every single second. There's no high and low. Of course, there are dynamics, but still every second needs to work, because you don't know when a guest will stand beside a speaker and hear the music and totally unconscious notice this feeling that it gives to you. It needs to work, and that was also quite difficult. The Avalon music is a good example of it, where we sometimes been too calm, too quiet, sometimes been too stormy, but we needed to understand what Toverland what kind of feeling Toverland wanted to create in the Avalon area, and that's why it's hard to produce music without a picture, because you need to imagine that every moment a guest can enter this area, and every moment in the music can be different, and this is his welcome. It needs to work every second. That's a big difference between onboard music, which is quite clear, the highs and lows of a roller coaster, and 30 minutes of music that need to work every second whenever someone enters the area. Yeah.
How was it for you to make music for Troy?
That was quite exciting, because we love the ride. It's an epic roller coaster with a Greek theme, which allows us to produce quite epic music, and that's cool. Because there are not so many rides where we just have the chance to produce big and epic music without making it sound evil. Most of the times the big roller coasters are themed in some sort of evil way. Here we have this very cultural, historic theming, which allowed us to produce just, in the best way of epic music with choirs and really a big melody with some ethnic influences from typical Greek instruments. So that was quite exciting, Made a lot of fun.
Do you ever reuse a piece of music, or is everything unique in your work?
It happens that when we produce a demo, the client says he doesn't like it. This music does not vanish. It still exists. And if there is a project where we think that it could be a good fit, we send it and we show it and we say, okay, do you think it could be this direction, or it could be even this piece? We don't reuse music that we produced for a client, for a theme park, and that is approved. We never reuse that. There is some music in our back catalog which can be used by several theme parks, but it doesn't really happen that often. Most of the times it's individually produced exclusive music.
How long does the process take from start with the ideas to the end?
Sometimes, even for I take half an hour of music as an example. Sometimes we have 2 weeks for that. Sometimes we have 2 years. But most of the times it gets finished closely before the deadline. Even though we could have had 2 years. It's still, you know, if we start very early, the thing is that also the creatives we're working with are not 100% clear of what it should sound like. Because they are also design-wise not really finished with the whole look and feel of a theme area or attraction. So that's why it's always really a tight to deadline thing in the end. But to say numbers, a composer can produce between 30 seconds and 1.5 minutes of music, of orchestral music a day. That's quite usual. Sometimes a composer needs to produce 4 to 5 minutes of music, but that leads to 14-hour shifts. So that's quite tough. That happens. We do a lot of trailer music beside the theme park music, and there it happens often that we need to produce a 3-minute piece of music, big orchestral music, until the next morning. So they are working overnight producing this piece within 10 or 12 hours. But in the theme park industry, that's not usual to be under such pressure. And most of the times we have enough time to also do a little back and forth with the client, send the first demo to him. He says, oh, okay, I don't like it, or I like it, or do it this and that way. So most of the times we have enough time.